Well, Lupe Rodriguez, welcome to the Anatomy and Clay Learning System podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for your time today. We appreciate it. You are the Associate Director of Career Technical Education for Elite Academic Academy in Southern California.
I
And
am.
we know you have some really innovative approaches to using anatomy and clay with in a very virtual setting with lots and lots of students right now. Before we get to what's happening now, how about just a few minutes on your background, particularly your training and interest in anatomy and science education? Are you from Southern California also?
I am. I actually have 21 years experience in career technical education. I've supported the creation of pathways across all 15 industry sectors in California, but my primary focus has been health science and medical technology, specifically the patient care pathway.
Wow.
And of course, within that pathway, we teach everything from medical assistant clinical, which has been my focus. And within that, pathophysiology, medical careers. So anatomy and physiology has really been the foundation of most of what I've been involved in 21 years.
Wow. Can you trace that interest back to something in your own youth or high school experience or something out of your family?
Yeah, before I became a teacher, I worked as a medical assistant for a number of years. So that really laid a foundation for my interest in wanting to teach really these complex concepts to students.
Gotcha. So walk us through a little bit of your sort of brick and mortar approach. Where did you, in what schools did you work?
So I worked for an ROP in Southern California. We served 5 of our local school districts. So not all the school districts adopted anatomy and clay, but I was very fortunate that at the school that I was at for a number of years, we adopted this program. And it was primarily used for my pathophysiology class, which, as I mentioned before, the focus really is, of course, anatomy and physiology and diseases and disorders. So it was really hard for students to understand the concepts from just sitting in through a lecture or looking at drawings or illustrations in textbooks. So we really were looking for a way to provide what CTE is known for. CTE is known for hands-on approach and hands-on learning and skills-based learning. So when we were trying to figure out a way of how do we instill this learning in students and giving them that hands-on approach, we came across anatomy and clay. I went to a conference and really the rest is history. I really gained some insight on the power behind students really touching and feeling and learning, collaborating. There were so many things that students got out of the system that coming to Elite, it was really something that was a non-negotiable for me. I really wanted to adopt this program in a virtual setting.
Yeah, that's great. So it was really your initiative that first brought it to the brick and mortar setting. And ROP, by the way, stands for, that's a collective service area for
regional occupational programs. Yes, there's several of them throughout California.
Gotcha. And when you introduced it there, before we come to the virtual side of it, what was the students' reactions at that point when you showed them the system?
I think that it was something so different for them. It was almost like this combination of an art class with a medical class. And although that may sound like you have to have some type of a creative, artistic side to you, we learned very quickly that we all have that side to us. We all have that side of wanting to build something with our hands. It's still there. We had it when we were in elementary school. That's part of how we learned growing up and concepts. And now as high school kids or high school students, they still have that creative side to tap into.
Yeah. Very good. So how long have you been with Elite, or give us a little background on Elite? How long has the organization been around? And
I've been at Elite, this is my first year, but Elite Academic Academy really is a trailblazing institution. It stands on a foundation of over 75 years of combined expertise in both traditional and charter school leadership. We really are dedicated to providing students with a truly exceptional education that emphasizes flexibility, individual support, and really diverse learning opportunities.
And programs across the board in terms of all the subject matters.
Yeah, so we offer a variety of programs that really are tailored to individual student needs. We focus on a couple of things: personalized homeschooling, virtual and blended academies. Our curriculum really is designed for students who prefer a more individualized approach over traditional brick and mortar settings. Anatomy and clay we're incorporating into our brand new patient care pathway through the health science and medical technology sector. Specifically, the course that we're implementing in is our pathophysiology course.
Okay. And give us an idea of how many students you have and how many, I understand you ordered quite a few of the models to make sure they're distributed around.
We did. So in a traditional brick and mortar, my experience, one of the challenges with anatomy and clay to brick and mortar, of course, is that you have about 2 or 3 students working on half of a skeleton. And even in a brick and mortar, that was a challenge, right? Because you have inevitably one student building and one student not. And so it was really important for me coming to this virtual setting that the only way to do it is for each individual student to get their own kit. And I was lucky and fortunate enough that our leadership team supported that, and they see the vision and they see what this can bring to the students. So we have mailed out half of a skeleton for each student because it's the only way. You know, they'll have their own individual set while the teacher is guiding them through there. So we're starting with one class of about 40 students and incorporating this year.
That's great. And give us an idea of some of the content you covered. What sort of systems are you building with the students?
Well, we're starting officially this system. Our teacher will be starting it in January.
Okay.
So the systems that we have lined up so far in terms of integrating this into our curriculum are everything from respiratory to cardiovascular, of course, musculoskeletal, GI, genital urinary. Those are the basics that we're starting off with.
Yeah. So the plan is you're gathering virtually for how long during the day? How long are your classes?
So our live sessions are about an hour each, with an opportunity for students to come in 4 days a week to meet with their teacher for any additional support that they might need.
And you're virtual, but there is a central place to come. I didn't realize that.
No, actually, everything is virtual. So
okay.
those 4 days a week, our teacher is available every morning in addition to their scheduled live session for students to come in and gain that additional support if they need it.
Gotcha. So the teacher is basically there in a room online.
Yes.
And students can stop by and ask questions or join in a conversation.
Correct.
To get clarification. That's great. That's great. So what has been the biggest challenge for you in terms of getting this all ready?
Shipping, definitely, right?
Yeah.
We ordered quite a few of these skeletons, which got shipped to our local warehouse. But quite honestly, the biggest challenge is putting all of these kits together because they don't come in individual boxes. But I mean, that's the biggest challenge. And once our students have them and we build them and we put the sets together, that's the easy part. But the biggest challenge definitely was just the shipping, which we have a phenomenal team in our headquarters that has done, a wonderful job in shipping this out to students. So now the fun can begin right after the holidays.
Yeah. And what sort of range, where are your students located?
All over Southern California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So literally across the basin from east to west, north to south,
Yes. Yes.
LA to San Diego. Yeah. Palm Springs. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. What is going to be your advice to students to channel their inner artist as they approach this learning?
Quite honestly, is to have fun. You're not going to break the skeleton. It's not a real muscle you're working with, right? There are no mistakes. And I think as soon as, we take that off the table, I think one of our biggest hesitations as learners is to make a mistake, is to build something that is wrong. So from the very basics and our first time in introducing this concept to students, I think it's really important to take that off the table, to let them know that we are going to make mistakes, to let them know that your skeleton is going to look different than mine, right? And most importantly, to let them know you can literally peel it off and start all over again. It's that easy. And I think as soon as we take that off and we take that sort of burden off of them, that we're not seeking perfection, we're really seeking for them to learn even through their mistakes. I think that it's going to be a lot of fun for them.
Yeah. You've touched on this already, but why do you think it is that hands-on learning works so well?
Somebody told me this a few years ago. If we remember back at how we learned when we were young, when we were in kindergarten, there was so much of our creative side that we were forced to use in learning simple things like colors or the alphabet, music, colors, a different environment that didn't look just like a traditional, typical classroom. And I think that what's important is for us to remember, one, as learners and also as teachers, that we can tap into that again, that it's okay to learn with our hands, that our brain really is able to make that connection from everything from touching the clay, feeling the clay, the color of the clay, the smell of the clay, the mess that you might make, right? In working with the clay. All of that really just lends itself to solidifying the learning. I can't emphasize this enough. We're not having students just sit there and listen to us. Mm-hmm. We're having students look at what we're building, follow our teacher's guidance, and build on their own and reflect on that learning, and really take a stand back and look at what they've built and how it connects to one another. I think one of the important things to mention is that this isn't a system where you build, the heart and then you take it off and you move on to the next part. It's a system where you're building and connecting those systems. And I think that is critical. Oftentimes when you're teaching out of a textbook, there's very little opportunity to connect the different systems and how they interact and sort of feed off of each other. And I think that this is such a great opportunity. They build the cardiovascular system, they build the heart, but then they're going to have to make those connections to arteries and veins and, from the center of this skeleton all the way through the tip of those hands. And I think that really is something special.
Yeah. Well, and obviously the systems interact in real life in our own human bodies. So right. It's important to see how they interact and connect. Yeah, that's great. What are you finding these days with students' interest in human anatomy? And do you find as you go into these units and into these classes that students develop a little more self-awareness?
Absolutely. I think in terms of what you had just mentioned, right, making that connection between what otherwise can be a very abstract concept, anatomy and physiology is, to looking at this system and making that connection with your own body. One of the other things that I think is important to mention is that these skeletons are proportioned, right? So everything that you build, you're not going to be building, this massive heart. Everything is going to be built in proportion to the size of that skeleton. I think the biggest aha moments for my students in the 10 years experience that I have with anatomy and clay has got to be that small intestine and how incredibly long it is. And just having to fit that, if you will, in this skeleton really brings that students back and reminding them this is proportion, right?
Yeah.
This is proportion. Not only do you have to fit the small intestine in what seems to be such a small cavity, but you have to fit the large intestine. You have to fit the stomach. There's so many other pieces that have to fit in this space that inevitably they reflect on their own body and think, how on earth, does all of that fit in there? And taking it to other levels, adding things on there, for example, pregnancy. In the growth of that baby, now we have to make space. The space does not grow. Having them critically think what's going to happen to that liver, what's going to happen to those intestines as the baby grows in this same space, I think really brings that knowledge into that self-awareness. And this is what the human body really is and what it's capable of doing.
With all your experience teaching with anatomy and clay, do you have any advice for teachers out there who might just be starting with anatomy and clay or considering getting into it? Any tips or suggestions about how to best integrate it into your instructional flow?
I think the biggest, my biggest takeaway, especially in the initial years of me starting to use the system, is patience. Having patience, knowing that even though we're experts in our craft, we may not be experts, we may not be artists. I know I definitely am not, but using those digital resources that come with the system and allowing those digital resources to really help you guide and facilitate that learning. Knowing that those resources were there for me really helped me learn the system. The other thing that we had our teacher take advantage of is the professional development for anatomy and clay. We had a skeleton shipped out to her so that she can actually use the skeleton, use the system, look at those digital resources, and really prepare. There's a difference between being okay making mistakes, in front of students and learning, versus not being prepared. And we really wanted our teacher to be super prepared in order to facilitate this learning experience for students. So I definitely think taking advantage of the digital resources, really taking advantage of that professional development, having patience with your students, but most importantly, being prepared to teach it.
Yeah. The patience with the students. I assume in every group of students, there's probably a couple resistors or folks who are less inclined to feel like they're going to be comfortable with this.
Sure.
Approach.
Yes.
And any suggestions about how to convince the resistors to get in there and start working, start building?
I think that we're very fortunate in our school and really across patient care pathways that students are serious about the career that they want to go into, and they really have an interest in learning everything that has to do with patient care, from medical terminology to anatomy to pathophysiology. We're very fortunate in that. With that being said, of course, you may have students that selected the class without really knowing what the class was for. But in this case, and I think because of systems like this, we're not asking students to simply do a worksheet. No, we're not asking students to create a presentation or copy something from a textbook. I think that that's why it really works, because we're having students use clay to build So two things will happen. The students will have fun in creating it and learn that this is something that they really want to pursue, or have fun in creating it and understand this really isn't for me. I'm not interested in pathophysiology. I could care less how long my small intestine is.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a great thing that they're figuring it out now and not waiting until they get to college to understand this isn't for me. I think that's why exposure is key.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Well, yeah, the hands-on part, I think that you're correct in terms of that, the field and the dedication that your group of students have to knowing that they want to help in serving their fellow man and becoming medical practitioners of one sort or another. Have you followed along with any of your previous graduates who have gone on from the ROP to into their fields, and have you stayed in touch with them?
Several of them, yes, still stay in touch. A lot of them are pursuing careers in nursing. A lot of them are pursuing careers outside of nursing. But the most important thing in creating these pathways for students and patient care, it's not specific to patient care, just pathways across all of our 15 industry sectors, is to really help the students explore and submerge themselves in a career before they even leave high school.
Yeah.
So that when they do leave high school, they're better prepared. It's not going to be perfect, but they're better prepared to make that decision of what they want to pursue. And at least we have done our job in exposing them to what the world, in this case in medicine, is going to be.
Absolutely. Terrific. Well, if possible, we'd love to check back in with you maybe at the end of the semester or next summer and just see how it went or how it's going then. And after you've had those kits out in with students and as you've gone through the virtual approach, we have no doubt it'll be successful, but it'd be great to hear your reflections at that point.
That would be great. Yes.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, Lupe, thank you so much for your time today, and thanks for coming on the podcast, and we wish you well.
Thank you so much.